here, it's bright. By 5 a.m. it's full on bright. Who thought that was a good idea? Because sunrise is like 4:30 or some like crazy stuff like that. So I will get like really angry. Hi, welcome back. I hope everyone's doing well and that they're either enjoying summer or very close to it. I know the weather here, if you've been around, you can tell that I've been complaining because it's summer, like no school, it's almost June, or like it will be, and then like it's been raining like most of May. It's been raining, so I'm a little bit peeved, but like I am gonna go home soon, so I will probably get a jump in like 30 degrees in Fahrenheit and then less sunlight. But yeah, we're enjoying it. It's a very interesting concept. I wish the weather was nicer because I wouldn't mind so long daylight hours, and in the winter it's not too bad, but I mean it does get to you eventually, but then there's snow, so it's fine, it all works out. But I just thought it'd be interesting if I just sort of went over what the different books I've read for Scottish Lit, because that's my third elective class I've took here at Glasgow. So, and then yeah, I just thought it was interesting because like you don't really talk about Scottish Lit, and then here it's such like a big thing. You walk into water shows and there's like a huge table and stuff, and they always hype up the newest release from a Scottish author and stuff. So yeah, I was just like let you into that, what we did for the first year for like both classes and stuff. So for the first term, Scottish Lit 1A, it was called The Fantastic and the Real. So the first one we did short stories. It's like this is like a huge Oxford collection of like Scottish short stories. I think it's really interesting, so if you're really scared, don't know where to start, there's a couple here that are my favorite, but this is also a good one because you can just read something that's like 5-7 pages and figure out which person you like, what kind of style you like, and then go from there. But there's a couple others I like Jackie K, and then what's the other one? Not that one. I think George McKay Brown. I'm glad I have this book, like the anthology, so I can just go in and just read whenever I want for fun. Then we did poetry, which it will include older in this anthology that starts with like Gaelic or Gallic, and there's like some Latin, and then there's Old French, just because that's what people were speaking here like 1,000 years ago and stuff, and that's what they found, but a lot of them are in English. Again, really interesting avenue. I recommend just getting both of these anthologies if you don't know where to start. And then there's some really cool ones, and it's interesting here because like they'll do some of these poems in school, but we don't, because we'll do other poets and stuff. It's just I really like the sort of like question of like, oh, what makes Scotland Scotland? Is it a country? Like what makes a writer Scottish? What makes a work Scottish? Like where's that line of like, has to be written about Scotland by a Scottish person while the person's in Scotland? Like it's all these different questions. And then now with immigration, what makes a person Scottish? What is the essence of Scotland? It's very interesting, and then you can bring it up to a bigger thing like the US, like what makes a person American and everything. So that's what I've enjoyed, just as like a side commentary, just in my head, connecting. We'll talk about stuff in class when it relates to Scotland, but it's like, oh, it's really, you can relate to like America, It's very interesting, not to like shame it, but it's just interesting to like just think about like where are the lines, for me, what does that mean versus like everyone else, And then the first book we did was The Trick is to Keep Breathing by Janice Galloway. Yeah, and I really love this one. I was afraid I was gonna hate all the books. One of my favorites, a bit more experimental, but it has sort of like her versus like society and like conventions and stuff. I love it. I've talked about it before. If you don't know where to start, Galloway in this book is really interesting. And then the next one, we did poetry for interwar period, and there was sort of like a Scottish Renaissance, which like literature and poetry and stuff between World War I and II. So that's also interesting, but like you'll find stuff out there, but I'm not gonna talk a lot about it. Sorry, not sorry. And then the next one was Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner This one was cool because I've actually been up to Arthur's Seat. I did fall down on the way down, and Steve did not let me forget it the whole day to random strangers, but very interesting. I think everyone knows about this one at least. So that was very interesting. A bit boring, not gonna lie. That's just me. And the next one we did was The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This one, in fact, look at the sprayed edges, and then look at, it's like this pretty blue, and there's like engravings, and then on the inside it's like the same like motif that's engraved in the front, so it's very pretty. Again, another classic, everyone knows this story and stuff. It was nice to actually read like the actual like book instead of just hearing about it and stuff. More interesting than Confessions of a Justified Sinner, but that's just my opinion. And then we read Peter Pan, which it's not this big. This is just it's Peter Pan Another Place, but still interesting. I didn't know it was Scottish, so I've never actually, like, I've seen the play, but like actually read it in more academic setting. Very interesting, but it's more enjoyable than the other books in that course. Not the most, but it was definitely like I didn't hate it. And then the next book, I don't have it, I'm lending it out right now, but it's called Trumpet by Jackie Kay. I loved it, yeah, because it deals with like identity in a bigger system, like, oh, am I Scottish? Because herself, she is an immigrant, or I think her dad is, so she's half black, yeah, she's like, so she doesn't look white, so you don't really think of a Scottish person, think of like a non-white person, so she has to deal with that. And then her character also has that background of like, oh, their parents are immigrants, and then they've come here, and then it deals with like grief. I loved it, it's very interesting. Go find it, it's called Trumpet, and it's based off of, I forget it, but there's this other jazz musician that was transgender, and that's what this is sort of based off of. And then the last book we did was The Strange Undoing of Prudential Hart. It's a very short play. I don't have it again, I think I'm lending it out, or I just can't find it. But I loved it. It was very interesting. It plays with like reality and fantasy, and it also sort of like modernizes a lot of stuff that was in traditional like ballads, like border ballads, and it's really interesting. So if you want a very more modern play, but it's still like Scottish and stuff, but you also have fun with it, that's a really good one. I loved it. I'm always recommending it to people. And if it's ever playing in town, I want to go see it, because they don't do it on a traditional stage, like theater stage. They do it in like a bar, so it's like you're there in like a pub or like a bar, and it's like these people just telling stories like you would think of like 50, 100 years ago, of like music playing, like people just making up a story and being lively. Yeah, overall I did like the course for that one. And then I did Scottish Literature again, 1B, and it's called The Stories We Tell Ourselves. So again, it's sort of like, you know, as a nation, America might say like, here's a story of Thanksgiving. It's wrong, it's different from the truth, but it's like, that's the one we like telling ourselves. So it's like going into like why people say things, why do certain things stick in sort of the psyche of a country. It's very interesting, because again, you can apply it to Scotland, which is very uniquely in the sense of it wants independence, but overall it's like still part of the UK, and then it's just trying to like fight, like be their own sort of like state, their own person, a part of all of this. Yeah, so it's very interesting, and they can also apply it to bigger things like the US and stuff. And then the first book we did was Momus, the Book of Scotland, where it's like subtitled "Every Lie Creates a World Where where that lie is the truth." It's very satirical, it's very funny, it makes you think. It was very interesting to read though. Some of them I didn't quite understand, because I don't know a lot of the Scottish like pop culture references and stuff, but if you want to have fun, this book is it. And then we did another play, Mary Queen of Scots. Interesting, fun. Don't know if I want to go see it in person, but I wouldn't say no, but I don't know if I would be like the driving force. But again, very interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Next was The House of the Green Shutters. It's one of those older books that it's like, fine, I read it, but like I don't ever want to read it again. I've slogged through it once, so that was a thing. And then we also did poetry, so more poetry from the anthology and stuff. Interesting, I'm just like, once you know how to read poetry, it gets easier every time. But oh, then we read Waverly. This, like, it's so thick. I like parts of it because it deals with like the Highlands and stuff, but overall I'm glad the historical fiction novel has progressed beyond this book, because this is sort of the first one. I'm glad we've progressed. But yeah, it took me so long to read it, and I normally read very fast, so do it at your own will, but also maybe just look it up online. And then the next one we did was The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Very easy, very fun read. One of the first more international authors we've read was Muriel Spark, and I want to read more of her stuff because this was good. There's a movie with Maggie Smith from like the 90s or something where she won an Oscar, and I want to read from the driver's seat, and I like her writing, so hopefully this holds up, because you can read into it and stuff like we did for school, or you can just have fun with it. But if you definitely want an easier Scottish lit read, she could be your pick. And then we read Train Spotting. Very controversial to teach because there's a lot of quotes from this book that just aren't good to say in a school setting. But then we, before we did any lessons, the teacher was like, I am paraphrasing, I am quoting from the book, do not report me, because I think some teacher in Edinburgh, like University of Edinburgh, did it, and then they got reported and stuff, but it's like they're quoting from Train Spotting. Didn't know there was a book. I knew there was the movie, I haven't seen either, but then I've read this, so maybe I can watch the movie soon. Again, people know of it, so maybe read the book as well if you want to get into that, because in the book there's also another book after he's written, and maybe even another one. But it's a bit funny how the whole like choose life thing is the quote people like to have of it on posters and stuff, but it's the thing it's complaining about is the thing it's become, very like, commercialized and everything. But interesting. I definitely loved it. It's written out in a Scottish accent, like Edinburgh accent and stuff, so there was times where I had to be like, hey Ailey, can you translate this for me? But once you get past that, it's very easy to read. Just it slows you down a bit, but you get through it. And then we did, so the second to last thing we did was Modern Mackers. So like there's like sort of like poet laureates back in the US and stuff, and then here they have a Macker, which is like a Middle Ages name for a poet and stuff. So there's been 3, and I believe the one currently right now is Jackie Kay, but her term is ending, so there's gonna be a 4th one. So it's Edwin Morgan, Jackie Kay, and then now Liz Lockhead. So now it's coming to an end, but very interesting, and it might not be the order. But yeah, that was very interesting to see their stuff and sort of why they were chosen and like voted and like actually given it and stuff. And sort of like the current one, Jackie Kay, she is a woman of color, and I believe gay or like LGBT. So it's very interesting, like just going from like Edwin Morgan, who's like this like white dude, to her, so like how they approach it, what they're using their like position for. But yeah, it's very interesting. Again, that's an easy place to get into their works as like a whole and stuff. But yeah, it was very interesting. I didn't know that was a thing, so I liked doing that as a course, and more poetry, which wasn't that bad because their poetry is not too hard to read. And then the last book we did was The Panopticon. I loved it. I was like, oh, it's the last book, what if I don't read it? And I'm really glad they chosen this one as a different book to read. I loved it. It's more modern. I think it was published 2015 or 2016 or something. It has to do with like surveillance and stuff, and Anais, how she like lives through like the foster care system and trying to just escape and sort of like make a place for her and herself and her life and in society and stuff without like becoming a part of the system. So I completely, again, enjoyed it and thoroughly loved it. So again, this is a very easy place to start if you're looking for a Scottish lit thing, but it's like too intimidating and you don't know where to start or what book's worth your time. This is, again, another one, if you're wondering. But yeah, overall, I did enjoy the course. I'm sort of glad I took it, even though I didn't have many more choices, because the classes I did want to take were all full. There was like a conflict with my schedule because with my degree path. So, but it was totally out of like left field, but I did thoroughly enjoy it, and hopefully I can share some of the novels that I read in Scottish Lit and that were very interesting and fun for me. And it shouldn't be intimidating, whether it's poetry to like full-on like novels and stuff from these older names and well-known and stuff. Like, you can get just as much from a book whether you're reading it for fun or for school, you know? But it's like also just a different lens you read it through. Oh, also for Scottish Lit, a Scots to English dictionary is helpful, because I thought Scots was just like another name for how people spoke up here with the accent. It's a whole on dialect, so this will be useful whether it's a website or just knowing that, oh, it's not really English, because also I didn't grow up around it, and I didn't even know it was a thing till I got here, and I was reading, I was just like, what is this? So be warned, but don't let it intimidate you. It's very easy. There's people who like will talk through it, and honestly sometimes just hearing it be spoken is way easier to understand than like trying to read it myself, because also I don't have a Scottish accent, you know. But yeah, just a word of warning, this will be useful, you'll use it. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this sort of look into the books we read for Scottish Lit, just trying to be very quick and snappy about it. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your week and everything, and see you next time.